Welcome to Mangastorian's Complete Story Series. It's time for us to continue the story of Berserk with chapter 118 to 221. Now in our last video, Guts had faced off against Jill's friend Azan in a bloody battle. With allowing himself to be caught by one of her attacks, he did manage to finally strike her down, revealing her true form. Now with that fight over, Guts escapes, only to be pursued by Farnese and her Knights of the Holy Iron Chain. After the fight with Azan, all that's left in Misty Valley is ash and destruction. The Skull Knight walks through the fields littered with the bodies of children, the individuals that were called the Elves, imagining the type of struggle that Guts had just endured. As he makes his way through, the Skull Knight stops by the tree that Azan lived in search of the item used to create her fantasy world. After taking the behemoth from the tree, the Skull Knight takes it and puts it in his mouth, swallowing it, and he continues on. Over in another part of the forest, Guts pushes onward, still suffering from the wounds of his recent fight. As he walks, he begins to hear the spirits all whispering to him. "You didn't kill him, did you? The little ones, you killed them all. Who's the monster now?" More and more spirits begin to appear in the leaves and the trees, all whispering how soon he will be like them. He will become a beast of the darkness. The spirits begin to change and take shape into one large spirit, and then that too begins to change. At first, Guts sees the spirits shifting into his own face, telling him how the monsters will take shape into him. Then he notices the behemoth. The spirit changes the form of Griffith, saying how if he uses it, he can become a true monster, just like his friends. Guts grits his teeth, swinging back, cutting the spirit in two, but the overexertion throws him off balance and he collapses. He tells himself that he can't die in a place like this. He still needs to crawl through the darkness. He has to finally reach him. Meanwhile, up in the sky, Puck flies through trying to catch back up with Guts, but as he finds him, he sees the spirits are already covering his body. Puck flutters down, telling Guts that he needs to get up before the spirits kill him. However, Guts continues to lay there, not responding. The spirits start to creep out and they reach for Puck, and he begins to use his Puck Spark and throw it away the ghosts. Slowly, Guts' eyes begin to open and he watches as Puck begins to push the spirits back, and he tells him, "Hey." Puck spins around, bopping Guts on the head. Guts flips over, rubbing his head, and Puck says that it's the first time that that's ever worked on him. Suddenly, Guts begins to laugh. "To think that I just got saved with the likes of you." As the wind blows through the dead trees, the spirits all begin to whisper again, telling Guts that he will soon become a monster. He gets up, slamming his sword into the ground, saying it doesn't matter. Nothing on this earth will change him. And with that being said, Guts continues to push himself forward, but behind him, someone watches. Farnese and her knights are watching, planning their next action. Suddenly, Guts stops and hears the clanking of armor running up to him. Before he even has a chance to react, Guts finds himself surrounded by the knights from before and the female commander standing in front. Farnese calls out to him, and as Guts stands there, the knights begin to stare in awe at the man before them. Murmurs between the knights can be heard, asking how can he even swing that giant sword? Why is he covered in so much blood? What's wrong with his left arm? Farnese calls out again, stating that they are the Holy Iron Chain. By divine command, they are here to capture him. Now it's time to throw down his weapons and surrender peacefully so that they may detain him in a manner acceptable by the gods. Guts stares at them, and Farnese asks if the blood that he is covered in is from the children that they just passed. He remains silent, and Farnese orders the knights to capture this man. They slowly begin to inch their way closer to him, but through the crowd, one steps forward, swinging down. Guts quickly turns back to block the attack, and the force from the strike sends him off balance again, and he tumbles. Seeing him push back, the rest of the knights all start to close in, and with each swing, Guts just dodges and steps back further. One knight sees the opening and thrusts his sword, and as the tip of the sword shoots past Guts' face, he throws his arm back. The mechanical arm flies open, crushing the man's face. The rest of the knights all begin to call out to surround him, and Guts continues to jump and weave through them. After propping up the sword on his arm, he rushes through, sliding on his knees, tripping the group of knights in front of him. More knights stand in his way, but this time, Guts begins swinging. The giant sword cuts through the men and their armor as if they were blades of grass, and everyone stares. The knights all start to panic, seeing that this man can actually swing that massive sword. And just before this fear can set in, the knight Azan steps forward, telling everyone to step aside. It's time for him and the black swordsman to have a duel. Azan leaps into the air and with a loud thump lands before Guts. He begins to spin his iron staff, telling everyone that they are about to witness why he is known as the Iron Staff Demon. Guts looks at him for a moment and says, "I've heard that name before. Weren't you once known as Azan the Bridge Knight?" Azan tells him indeed he was, though he has not been called that for a very long time. Guts goes on saying that he remembers a man protecting a bridge when he was younger. They said that more than 100 knights couldn't even pass because of him. Azan then asks if he knows his name. How about his? What would his name be, Sir Knight? Sighing, Guts tells him, "I was never a knight. Just call me Guts." Suddenly, Azan begins to twirl his staff, telling him, "All right, our duel shall begin, and I will only break your bones." The heavy iron staff then slams down as Guts narrowly dodges, but the force of the swing did manage to break the tree behind him in two. Azan continues to swing his staff, thrusting it forward, and with each pass of the staff, Guts just ducks and weaves through them. However, the more that he jumps, the more faded his vision becomes. Seeing a moment of hesitation, Azan focuses his thrust, forcing Guts to block. The staff slams into the side of Guts' sword, throwing him back, and Azan calls out to Guts, telling him that he has displayed great skill with his sword. It has brought back an old thrill to his heart. Guts takes a knee trying to catch his breath, but the longer that he goes, the more strength that he loses. So he has to come up with a plan. He looks up seeing Farnese and he charges forward. Azan prepares himself, but rather than attack, Guts runs up to the iron staff. He jumps off, landing just before Farnese, and all of the knights begin to charge in. With one swing of his massive sword, Guts cuts down the guards and begins to walk forward. Never having actually been in battle before, Farnese nervously holds out her sword. As Guts knocks it away, a branch falls, landing on a wound where Guts was shot in the leg by a bolt. Pain shoots through his body, causing him to stop, and Farnese's sword grazes by Guts' neck. However, with no more strength left, Guts falls over. Farnese watches, asking if she actually did it, and the knights all begin to cheer. But with Guts captured, one of the knights screams and shouts that he just killed their friends. One knight runs over to stab Guts, but Azan stops him, telling him to cease their attack. This man offers no resistance, so they will not harm him. Azan then turns back to Farnese, who was staring at her bloody sword. He reaches out, asking if this is the first time that she has ever seen a man killed before, and she doesn't answer. He goes on telling her that she must not fear her sword. Though it is heavy, she can never lay it down until no foes are standing. With that, she turns back to her knights and tells everyone that it is time for them to withdraw. They have captured the man that they were after. A short while later, Guts is led by a chain wearing a stock into the Holy Iron Chain camp. Everyone watches in disgust as they bring him to Farnese's tent. Once inside, Farnese tells the guards to secure the black swordsman to the post and leave. She wishes to speak to him in private. As the guards leave, Farnese grabs a barbed whip, telling Guts that before she brings him to the Vatican, she wants to know a few things first. What are his origins, history, and motive in all of this? Guts stares and laughs, saying that with all of their stuff about God, they think that he's the evil one here. Farnese lifts Guts' chin with her whip, saying that he used the Lord's name in vain and she will not allow it for a second time. Now, what are these peasant weapons? What are they used for? She then turns to the Dragon Slayer, asking how could he have used this hunk of iron effectively in battle rather than just a practical weapon. Guts doesn't answer, then Farnese grabs the behelit, asking what is this strange thing? Is it something used by a pagan god? However, through all of the questions, Guts remains silent. She flails the whip, asking why he does not talk, and he finally opens his mouth, asking if she believes in God and the devil. She tells him how dare he ask such a thing. God and his glory live on because of their faith and in their hearts. But as she goes on, Guts laughs that he's met a nobleman who spoke of God as she does on the battlefield. He was cut down among all of the penniless beggars, all wondering why their god had left them. And in a fit of rage, Farnese lashes the whip, ripping the skin off of Guts' chest. Unfazed by the hit, he goes on stating that Azan spoke to her. She looks up to him with the same respect that he had for her, just like the other beggars. She screams in anger, flailing the whip back and forth, tearing off bits of skin. Guts stands there, unfazed by the attack, but before she can continue, Azan calls out, "What's going on?" Farnese asks what's the meaning of them coming in like this, and Azan looks at Guts. He tries to ask again, but Farnese tells him that she will not hear it. Return this man to his cell at once. As the guards pull Guts out, Serpico tells Guts that he would appreciate it if he didn't torment Farnese so much. As he can see, she is far too cute for that. Guts continues walking and laughs it off, and as they leave, Serpico looks back into the tent. He finds Farnese kneeling and praying, and he closes the tent and leaves. As the night begins to fall, Guts sits in his little cage, telling himself that anyone other than him would die in these conditions. And as the wind blows through, he begins to feel the brand bleed, and then he sees a spirit crawl out of the ground, and he just smiles. This is just nice. The story of Berserk is going to be continuing. I don't really know what else to tell you. Every Friday we're releasing an episode, so subscribe to the channel so you can keep up to date with it. And don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter at MangaStorian, and I'll see you next time right here.